Welcome to this very special edition of the KJ Masterclass Live, the show which ensures that you profit from your time spent here with experts, either through their industry insights, information, or simply learning from them. And today we have Jim Carlough. He's a business strategist, speaker, author, and we'll learn from him about how one can develop the mindset and skills to lead successfully. Welcome to the show, Jim.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here today.
You are welcome. Welcome to the show, Jim. Welcome to India in this online form. And I'm sure not just in India, but a lot of people across the globe will benefit from what we are going to talk right now. We'll learn from you about the blueprint for great leadership. We'll also talk about your book, The 6 Pillars of Effective Leadership. We'll talk all that. But before that, let's learn a bit about you, a bit about your journey, your background, so that people know who they are listening to.
So I've spent predominantly more than 30 years of my professional career in healthcare in the United States in various areas, health insurance side of the business, and then in the late 90s, migrated to the technology side of the business. So I've done quite well. I've led organizations, I've led departments, I've led teams from 2 to 200. I've created a lot of opportunity for people to grow into management and leadership, and saw some commonalities along the way, and started about 25 years ago I started to mentor people in terms of leadership and leadership skills and how to develop a loyal and trusted team that's going to be highly productive.
Absolutely, absolutely, Jim. So let's understand about leadership today. Who is a leader? Is it the CEO is a leader, or a leader is a leader? Because CEO has got so much of paraphernalia around him. So that's why it's a simple question, but I want to understand your, intelligence on this.
So the first thing I want to say is there's this old notion that leaders are born that way, that, from birth, a person who has a leadership characteristic or a gene that's going to make them a leader. I don't believe that. And I'm a perfect example of that. I have developed my leadership skill over the years of my work in business. But more importantly, I believe leadership is a trait that is developed over time and continues to evolve, develop, and improve. And so what I've done is I've helped leaders understand that. And most importantly, I've helped leaders understand how to manage people and how to understand the human side of what you're doing. So for me, I didn't come out of my mom's belly and all of a sudden was a great leader. That I had some great mentors and managers and leaders that I've worked with throughout my career that really have helped guided that pathway. And along the way, learned some interesting things about each one and took traits from each of those to develop the leadership skill or the leadership framework that I use today.
Absolutely, absolutely, Jim. So I want to understand for the audience is, you said not a leader does not necessarily have to be a born leader. These are skills that can be learned. But you see, a lot of people nowadays say two different things. One is that's technocrats, people who know about their expertise. They are part of the system, they rise. And then when you put them in leadership role, they do not know much about people. And that is where the discord happens. So leaders should be those who understand more about people rather than those who know about their expertise. They be people who are, people talk about heart-centered leadership, conscious leadership, and all those things. That is leadership, pull up empathy. So those are the things that leadership should have, and that will take the organization further. Otherwise, things will, like this great resignation, quiet quitting will continue to happen. Toxic workplaces will continue to happen. What is your thought on this?
I absolutely am 100% on that page. I'll give you an example. The foundational trait that I say people have to have in leadership is integrity. And that's my first pillar in terms of how to be a great leader. If you want to build a trusting and committed team, you have to operate with unbiased integrity, making consistent decisions, consistent principles day in and day out. If you can't do that, and if And if people don't see that you're able to drive down the middle of that roadway and not veer left or right for your own personal gain, they're not going to believe in you. They're not going to trust you. They're not going to be committed for the long journey. And so that foundational pillar is highly important. And I'll tell you, I learned that very early in my professional career. And I learned that at the age of 22. I was elected to a political position in the small town I grew up in. And the city administrator said to me, "I'd like to talk to you." And so I didn't know what it was about. We sat down and he said, "Look, a lot of people are going to try to tell you what to do. I'm not going to do that." He said, "You'll do what you think is best, but I want you to do one thing for me every single day." And he said, "When you go to bed at night and you put your head on your pillow, ask yourself this question: did I do anything today for my own personal, financial, or personal gain at the expense of another individual or organization or department within a company?" If you can say you did not, you can rest easy and sleep well. If you did in fact act or behave in that way, then you are somewhat selfish and you're not looking out for the greater good of the common team. And that foundation has carried me even to today. Every night before I go to sleep, I ask myself that question. And that consistency is the one thing that I believe has led me to have the following that I have.
Absolutely. That's wonderful. That's wonderful of you. That's wonderful of, the person who said, you told you this thing. But you see, you are talking about utopia here. Uh, does to look around and do you find this today is very, very rare. That is why we are asking so many questions about people are questioning about leadership is in crisis. People are questioning all these toxic workplaces. And so when you talk of integrity, Jim, integrity for whom? Integrity for the shareholders, and and when you talk of shareholders, you see 80%, 90% are owned by the promoters itself. And when you talk of customers, the state of customers. So I want to understand for the leader integrity for whom? Nowhere we do see are going to see this. We don't see this.
And that's the unfortunate part of it. When you look at the world around us today, I think in a lot of places we lack that integrity. We see it in our government. We see that in the worldwide organizations. And I'm a firm believer that what goes around comes around. And at some point, shifting the chairs on the Titanic is not going to make you a successful leader. Because at the end of the day, people will learn and realize that you lack that integrity and that common theme that has to carry you for the long journey. I've had employees that have worked for me at 2 different companies, at 4 different companies, because they know and they value what I bring to the table. I spoke at a local university 2 weeks ago. And after the class, about 20 students stayed around to ask me questions. The most common statement I heard from those 20 students, all of which had part-time jobs, was, "I work for somebody who lacks integrity, and I'm not comfortable in that workspace." And my response to them was, "Get out. Find another opportunity. If you can't believe in that person and you're not trusting of that person, find another job. You need to be happy in what you're doing. And if you feel that you're in an environment that you don't have that, it could be dangerous in terms of from a career perspective, not necessarily from a physical harm perspective, but that could happen as well. But it was very, very interesting to hear some of these students complain about their part-time jobs and the managers that they worked for, and that they lacked integrity, they lacked compassion, and all they cared about was, you need to do 20 of these tasks in the next 30 minutes, and that's going to be your goal. And they basically were task masters and not people managers.
Absolutely, absolutely, Jim. But you see, should we be hopeful for the future? When you talk of integrity amongst leaders, look at the workplace leadership. So many, very high percentage of resumes of these leaders embellished, wrong things, not correct, so many things. How do means fake it till you make it? If that is the dictum, that is your motto, how do you expect integrity in the later years within an environment which is so much of full of which is so demanding? Help us understand that scenario.
I think that's a valid statement. When I look around in terms of the business world, in terms of leaders that act or have integrity as their bottom line mindset, I have to look at the CEO at Microsoft, who's been there since 2014, Satya Nadella. One of the founding principles that he has in his leadership style is integrity. And you see it in every action that he has. Now, a leader with integrity will pass that trait on, just like a parent will pass that on to a child. And I think it goes beyond just the business world. I think it goes into the family unit or the family life. You've got to have that integrity and trust and operate with that unquestionably all the time. And I think if you can't, I think that's when you start to see people who are very transient with regard to their professional career, where they've been a leader at 12 or 15 different companies, because they come in, they make change, but over time, people realize that what they thought they were getting, they weren't getting. They may have talked a good game coming in, but they weren't able to have a sustainable growth path. They weren't able to have a trusting, committed, passionate workforce. If you don't have a committed and passionate workforce, you're not going to be successful. My analogy to that is, think of the military. A leader in the military has to have the troops behind them committed and focused. If that troop does not have that commitment and focus to that leader, they're not going to follow them into battle. The same thing goes in the workplace. As a leader, if my employees don't believe in me, know I have their back, know that I'll protect them, and know that I'm going to help them, guide them down the right path, I'm not going to be successful, and they're not going to be successful.
Absolutely, absolutely. We'll come to your book after this, but first, let's understand one more thing about leadership. You talk about, that leaders aren't born, they are developed. So you can develop leader. But leaders without that heart, it's like artificial intelligence, very intelligent, super intelligent, but without that feeling. And that is where, the emotional intelligence comes in. So do you think developed leaders will only have intelligence like that of an AI? Will manage people like AI? And real leaders will have that, will have that emotional intelligence. It's the same difference between humans and AI. How do you see this part?
I totally agree. I think if a manager is going to try to lead by AI, it's going to be very difficult for them to see the personal side of a situation. I'll give you an example. I worked for a technology company for about 8-9 years, from 1999 to 2007. And I ran multiple departments. One of those departments was old green screen technology that was going to be sunset. And I had to tell this department of 25 to 30 people that their jobs were going away. Now, we didn't have AI at the time. And I thought, how am I going to tell these people their jobs are going to go away, but also keep them motivated, because I couldn't afford to let them leave? So I sat for a while and I thought for a couple of days, and then I eventually went to them and I made 3 commitments to them. First commitment is, We will only reduce staff as we convert customers to the new technology. I will give you as much warning as I know of in advance of when I think your position may go away. That's commitment number one. Commitment number two, since many of them were software engineers, I committed to them that if they wanted to learn the programming language that we were building new products in, I would get that training for them, so that when their position was going to be eliminated, they could be transferred from this program over to this program. The third commitment I made to them was that if they decided they didn't want to make that transition, I would personally assist them in finding them a position within the organization or outside of the organization that best met their skill set. Here's what happened. Number one, not one person left before their job was eliminated. Not one person. And you would think, knowing your job's going to go away, you'd start looking for a job. But here's the surprising thing that I never expected. This team of 25 to 30 people, for 2.5 years running, had the highest employee satisfaction scores in a 20,000 person company. This little department, people knew their jobs were going to be eliminated, but they were the most committed, they were loyal, and they stayed until their role went away and we moved them into another role. Of that entire department, I think only 2 people chose to find a job on the outside, and I did assist them in doing that as well. But that's something I don't think you can get from AI.
Absolutely, Jim. But you see, in today's world, we have got only one Jim, and there are so many others who are not Jim. It is a difficult world. Be that as it may, let's understand things better through your book, The 6 Pillars of Effective Leadership. Tell us a bit about this book. Who is this book for? What this book is all about?
So that's a great lead-in, because, and exactly what we've been talking about, people don't have some of the skill sets that you really need to manage people. So when I think about the 6 pillars, we've already talked about 2 of them, integrity and empathy. Those are 2 very, very important. Now, a lot of people confuse empathy with compassion. Empathy is putting yourself in the other person's shoes, and that's what I did in the example we talked about. Compassion is understanding what that person is going through, which is the 3rd pillar. There may be something going on in one of your team's, one of your employees' personal lives that is impacting their work effort. Or it may be playing on their mind so much that it's creating illness for themselves or their people in their family. As a leader, you have to be able to sense that and understand that. And you have to be able to try to help them. Not hand them money, but try to help them. We hear a lot about the struggles from a mental health perspective today. I believe that as a leader, we have an obligation to look out for the mental health of our employees. And when you sense that something is happening in an employee's life or the lives of somebody within their family, we have an obligation to help them. And so that's the 3rd pillar. So we've got integrity, empathy, compassion. The next 2 are focus and stability. Now, those are 2 very, very different things as well. Focus is having a singular focus on exactly what you want to accomplish and goal. I'll give you an example. Amazon. Jeff Bezos, there are many years that Amazon was not profitable, but he stayed focused on exactly what he wanted to become, which was the largest retailer in the world. And what has happened? He has done that. I believe single-handedly, Amazon is what's hurting a lot of the commercial department stores, malls in America, and malls in other countries, because people can have it delivered to their home for the same price and much quicker and at less cost than driving 10 miles to the local mall. That's focus. Stability is always acting the same way in how you manage your business or your life. And if you think about that, and you think of some of the people around the world who probably show the most amount of stability, I want to, the person that comes to my mind is Warren Buffett. And Warren Buffett, and this, I live in the Dallas, Texas area. And I was in a conversation a few weeks ago with someone, and we were talking about car dealerships and a local car dealership that went up for sale. And this individual said to me, you know, the only person that can afford that car dealership is Warren Buffett. And I was like, Warren Buffett, he's not in the car business. And the person said, you want to bet? And so we Googled, and Warren Buffett's company owned a large percentage of the car dealerships in and around the Dallas, Texas area. Who knew? But what he did is he looked for undervalued assets, even in the automotive industry, bought those, and have evolved them to be very, very profitable, more so than they were when he purchased them. That's stability. Whether it's a car dealership, a manufacturing organization, a financial organization, Warren Buffett approaches it with the same process, commitment, and again, stability, at getting it stable and moving it forward. And then the last pillar that I think is important is humor. I don't think we laugh enough anymore around the world. And I don't mean humor from being a comedian, but I use humor in leadership to diffuse tense situations when two employees are having a disagreement, or if I'm trying to get people to think more globally about something, I'll try to relate it to something funny that's happening in the room, or something, or self-predicating humor, you know, something about me, something to break the ice and to get people back to a kind of a personal level, as opposed to this high tense, high intensity level where stress is at a max. And so put together this roadmap would give someone who wants to become a leader a good foundation that if they follow that, they will have a committed workforce, a passionate workforce, because they'll know that the leader has their back, cares for them, looks out for them, and they're going to be long-term employees. They're less likely to leave an organization that is built like that. And so my book is positioned perfectly for two types of individuals: leaders who are already leaders who want to get better, who may be good, as you mentioned early on, at the technical aspect of their job, or the technology per se, but less about people. And also for that up and coming manager who may not have a business degree or may not understand people or human psychology, things of that nature, so that they can better manage and be prepared for leadership. My first leadership job, when I look back at it, I was horrible. I had no clue what I was doing. There was one time when someone came into my office screaming, literally screaming. And instead of responding with humor at the time, I think I screamed back. How inappropriate was that? I mean, so even in my own journey, I have applied these principles to be where I am today.
Absolutely, absolutely. The six pillars of effective leadership: integrity, empathy, compassion, focus, stability, and humor. You know, humor reminds me of this whole disparity between the pay scale of the executive as well as the lower employees. And it comes to when they talk about bonus only, about profitability for themselves. It reminds me, instead of humor, it reminds me of the saying called laughing the way to the bank. That is for themselves, not the general. That is the irony of the situation. But these things are great. But you see, where do you get all these things? Integrity, you are born with. Can that be taught? Empathy, you are born with. Can that be taught? Compassion, can that be taught? Focus, it all depends. Relative term. Stability, again. So many things are, humor. It's the way you are. Most of these things, Jim, are part of who you are, of your human existence. Where do you get it? Can a leader learn? When you talk about that, leaders can be developed. Can they learn these things? What is the do you have some mechanism you can inject it like they did in the movie Matrix, and then you start becoming the way you want to be?
So in my book, I wanted to get across several things. I wanted to give that roadmap, but I give each reader two other things. I give them a real life example, whether a story about myself or someone else, and how they used that characteristic in their leadership capabilities. I also reference, like I mentioned already on integrity with the CEO from Microsoft, other industry leaders who use that particular trait in their management style so that they can do further research and say, hey, I want to read about so-and-so, who I happen to know has, a great focus on empathy. And then I also, in many of the chapters, give ways for reflection and for people to think about how they can apply that in their own world. So it's a little bit of a combination of hey, I'm going to tell you a story so that I can get this point about why compassion or empathy is important. But here's a leader who also shows that in the real world that you can research and find references to, and also exercises if you want to start to try to develop that with simple steps to go through to say, if I want to become a more compassionate manager, what are the three things I should focus on? And the book has that.
Absolutely. So, Jim, do you have a copy of the book with you in case you want to show it to the people? Just 1 second. Can you show it a bit well so that, yes, absolutely. Wonderful. Wonderful. Yes, people can recognize, okay, this is the book that they need to get hold of, especially those leaders who need all these things to learn for themselves and for the benefit of their people. So, as I said, there's so much to learn from you, Jim, and I'm sure a lot of people would want to learn more about you, from you, take your services, get your book. What's the best way for them to do so?
The best way to do so is to go to my website. There's links on my website to contact me, also for purchasing of the book. My website is www, and it's my name, Jim Carlough, no spaces, just as you see on the screen, but take that space out, .com. So www.jimcarlough.com is the best way to find me. My phone number's there, my email address is there. I would welcome conversation. I would welcome any impact. If you want to purchase a book, you can do it through there or fill out the form and it'll come to me and we'll get one in the mail to you.
Wonderful. With this, it's a wrap on this very special edition of the KAJ Masterclass Live. Thank you so much indeed for joining us.
Thank you.